Manhunt is intensifying for that man who shot and killed 4 people at a Tennessee Waffle House.
There is a chance that Ryan King at this moment is at large with 2 other weapons.
At this point, it does not appear likely that Mike Pompeo can get the votes that he needs here for becoming a Secretary of State.
Top cop in Long Island firing back after a recent threat against cops, warning them about MS-13.
When you threaten a cop anywhere in this country, we're going to act back. And these gang members, they cannot be tolerated.
The DNC chair now defending its lawsuit.
I'm punching back for democracy.
Remember, there's reciprocal discovery. So the Democrats will have to produce all the information about the dossier.
The Duchess of Cambridge has gone into labor. This baby will be the 5th in line to the throne, following behind brother Prince George and sister Princess Charlotte.
Yep, talk about magic. We just had Sam Darnold and his mom, Chris, on the program, and there was a magical moment during the commercial where after he presented her with the beautiful necklace from Kay's Jewelry for Mother's Day, during the commercial, Chris said to all 3 of us, you know, as good a football player as he is, he's a better son.
That's sweet. She's so proud of him. She's a PE coach. A middle school PE coach.
They've done very well.
And I think it's consensus opinion. He's the best quarterback in the draft, and it's a sense that if Cleveland doesn't take him, the Giants will. So it's going to be a great moment.
So Cleveland gets the first pick,
right,
and then Giants get the second pick?
Yes, unless Cleveland trades out with, what do you think, Ted? Unless they trade it for a bunch of picks, because they have a lot of holes to fill.
So anyway, good luck to him. You're going to be able to see the draft on Fox this year.
I asked him during the commercial break, I said, where do you want to play? Because I don't even care. I don't care. I'm so excited.
That's
right, which is a great answer, but most people would say as great as Cleveland is,
they want to live in New York.
There's something about New York.
What, the traffic, the congestion, $50 for parking,
Steve Ducey,
$8 coffee. Yeah, it's great.
All right, it's a wonderful city. I do hope.
Yeah, I think New York is without peer.
All right, it's 7:02 on the East Coast, and President Trump preparing to welcome the French President Emmanuel Macron to the White House today.
And the Iran deal expected to be front and center during the talks.
Griff Jenkins joins us right now live from Washington, D.C. with more on what we can expect this week from Mr. Macron.
Good morning, guys. It's a big deal. This is the first stage of the administration, and there's a lot for the two to discuss, from North Korean developments to the future of the Iranian nuclear deal. President Macron weighed in yesterday with Chris Wallace.
For nuclear, what do you have as a better option? I don't see it. I don't have any plan B for nuclear against Iran. So that's a question we will discuss. But that's why I just want to say on nuclear, let's preserve this framework because it's better than a sort of North Korean type of situation.
Meanwhile, as Macron urged President Trump to stay in the Iran deal, Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif was warning the U.S. from changing or exiting the agreement.
Withdrawing from it would be seen by the international community as an indication that the United States is not a reliable partner. Iran has many options, and those options are not pleasant.
President Trump has been very critical of the Iran deal signed by President Obama, but gave a temporary extension to it in January. Now a May 12th deadline looms to remain, as German Chancellor Angela Merkel will visit Washington later this week and also plans to encourage the president to stay in the deal. Now back to the Macron's visit. The president and First Lady will host the Macrons for a private dinner tonight at Mount Vernon, then the official state dinner at the White House tomorrow. Macron will address Congress on Wednesday, guys.
All right, they get a lot of quality time together. I think 3 straight days, and then Angela Merkel closes out the week. You'll see the difference in their relationship. Griff, thanks so much. What a great interview Chris Wallace did yesterday.
So good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's so good because there was no translation needed. He speaks such great English. And yet I did not know the similarity. He said, look, I get along with the president for a few reasons. Number one, we both came from business. Number two, nobody expected either one of us to win. And because we're putting our agenda through, both are facing some major headwinds domestically.
And he said everyone wants to criticize until you're in the position. don't criticize unless you're in the position. I'm doing the best I can, he says.
That's right. So it'll be a great visit. And then, of course, the German leader comes to town on Friday. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about this. You got to wonder why the Democrats are in such a hurry and they're not going to wait for Robert Mueller's conclusion to his investigation, because it was announced at the end of last week that the Democrat National Committee was going to sue WikiLeaks, the Russian government, and Donald Trump because they clearly colluded to fix the election back in 2016. The big question for Tom Perez, who runs the DNC right now, is why would they spend probably millions of dollars at this point when they should be devoting that cash to winning the House? That was one of the questions over the weekend. Here's his answer.
I don't know the amount of money that it will take, but I'll tell you, it's hard to put a price tag on preserving democracy. It would be irresponsible of me not to do this. At the end of this, they were trying to bring about chaos, and they did. We had people on my team at the DNC who got death threats. When you try to do that to our team, yeah, I'm gonna punch back. I'm punching back not only for my colleagues, I'm punching back for democracy. That's what we believe in as Democrats. Elections should be fair. I understand people may agree and disagree, but you know what? We're fighting for them.
Wow, fantastic. Maybe you should tell Debbie Wasserman Schultz, your predecessor, when the FBI calls and says you've been hacked, pick up the phone and do something about it. You really are to blame for that.
Well, she did.
Number two,
she said she wasn't going to give it to him.
No. Well, she said first they ignored it, then they reached out again, they ignored it again.
She said
and then when
no.
he finally did it, they said no. It's a 66-page complaint. And Tom Perez, among your critics, by the way, this is the best thing that could ever happen to Republicans, because the last thing people want to think of is that somebody on the other side has a better agenda than you. How about no agenda? The DNC lawsuit, 66 pages long, and among the people that think it's stupid, David Axelrod. So what are you doing?
Alan Dershowitz, who is a Democrat, had this to say about it.
It's a complicated lawsuit. I think it will be dismissed as to Russia based on sovereign immunity. It will probably be dismissed as to the Republican Party based on political questions. But remember, there's reciprocal discovery. So the Democrats will have to produce all the information about the dossier and about other attempts, maybe. There should have been an objective, neutral, bipartisan commission looking into the Russian role in the election without pointing fingers. Now we have partisan lawsuits and partisan attempts to get the president and get Hillary. That's not going to get us the information we need.
Right. I'm glad he talked about reciprocal discovery, because the Democrats don't want to give up all the information they know about the dossier and things like that. That's why the President of the United States said, hey, the Republicans should use this to their advantage, counter for the DNC server that Brian was talking about, that they refused to give to the FBI, the Debbie Wasserman Schultz thing with the IT guys and all that trouble. So this is a can of worms. I don't know that the Democrats have really thought this through, because ultimately it could come back to bite them in the butt.
We'll see what happens. Yeah. Meanwhile, we talked about those caravans that were coming up through South America and up through Mexico to reach the U.S. The first wave of those migrant caravans has hit the U.S. border. There are about 50 members that are requesting asylum in California right now.
That's right.
Yeah, 500 was spotted Saturday in Hermosillo. Another group of 500 was spotted in Hermosillo and Sonora, riding freight trains north to the border. But right now, 50 from Central America. Fantastic. Looks safe. So 50 from Central America have caravanned up through Tijuana, Mexico, and they are going to be looking for some type of asylum. And of course, they got to plead their case that they're refugees and they're running for their safety.
Well, you know, it's interesting because we had heard that they would just try to somehow cross the border, but they are in Tijuana and they are filling out the paperwork. What's interesting, though, is the federal government says that family units and unaccompanied minors would have priority. Keep in mind, for the most part, this caravan of migrants disbanded after the president made it very clear that he was going to, this would impact NAFTA negotiations going forward. Next thing you know, for the most part, the Mexican government pulled the plug on it.
It's amazing because they take one step onto U.S. soil, and then they have a case that we have to keep them here. It's catch and release, and we release them back into America until they have their court hearing, because they plead their case. And those leaders down in Mexico are telling them, or South America, telling them, bring kids with you because you have a better chance of getting to stay.
Right, so they're not trying to cross the border. They're actually on the Mexican side, filling out paperwork, trying to apply for asylum to the United States. We'll keep you tuned on that.
Last time there was a surge visitors like this, a lot of them were unaccompanied minors, teenagers. A lot of them ended up being MS-13. So, and that's a story that we was covering earlier, because MS-13, the big message now is go kill a cop. So they are already reacting, being scooped up. Meanwhile, 10 minutes after the top of the hour, Jillian, I understand you got some breaking news.
That's right. We are following a story we want to get you guys caught up on. So let's go ahead and start with this Fox News alert. A massive manhunt underway for the man who killed 4 people at a Tennessee Waffle House. Schools now locking out all visitors until further notice. Police looking for 29-year-old Travis Reinking, who opened fire at the suburban Nashville restaurant before a hero customer stepped in, grabbing the gun.
I'm not kind of made up my mind, because there's no way to lock that door. That if it was going to come down to it, he was going to have to work to kill me.
And incredibly, James Shaw Jr. suffered only a minor injury. The shooter was arrested just last year by the Secret Service in a restricted area near the White House. To another Fox News alert, this ISIS follower and only surviving terrorist in the 2015 Paris attacks found guilty of a shootout with police in Belgium. Salah Abdeslam will now be spending the next 20 years behind bars. That officer ambushed in 2016, leading to his arrest in the Paris terror attacks that left 130 people dead. He will be tried for that separately. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee set to vote on President Trump's Secretary of State nominee, Mike Pompeo, today. But there may not be enough votes to recommend him for confirmation. All 10 Democrats and at least 1 Republican have said they will oppose him. However, the committee could still send the nomination to the Senate unfavorably, which would allow for a vote in the full Senate. The hearing comes after Pompeo met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And we are on baby watch right now. The Duchess of Cambridge has gone into labor. Here's a live look at St. Mary's Hospital in London, where Kate Middleton checked herself in overnight. This baby will be the 5th in line to the throne, following behind brother Prince George and sister Princess Charlotte. Folks have been camping outside the hospital for weeks to get a first glimpse at the new royal. And when we get our first glimpse or some news, we will let you know.
I don't get that they're standing outside the hospital. It's not like as soon as the baby's going to be born, they're going to hang it out the window.
But like, I mean, people have been out there for weeks. Michael Jackson. It's crazy. Brian's just looking at me like.
I just don't get it.
I don't either.
What will you get? That everyone.
That people care that much about somebody else's baby.
There's so much bad news in the world. This is a little bit of good news.
It's just the
happy news.
To be royal.
Really?
Yeah. It's
okay.
amazing.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Jillian.
All right. Thanks, Jillian. 12 minutes after the hour. James Comey just released his books on ethical leadership, right? But what about his ethics? I put that in bold. Law professor Jonathan Turley has the answer next.
And this dog, truly man's best friend. How he helped lead police to a 3-year-old little girl that was lost in the woods for hours.
That's a good boy.
I understood this to be my recollection recorded of my conversation with the president. As a private citizen, I felt free to share that. I thought it very important to get it out.
Did former FBI Director James Comey break the law when he leaked those memos to the media? Let's ask constitutional law professor at George Washington University, Jonathan Turley. He joins us now. Good morning to you, Professor. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Did he break the law?
He certainly did violate the rules of the FBI. This was not some type of personal diary, as so many in the media portrayed it as. When we see the memos, it only reaffirms what many of us said at the time. This is clearly FBI material covered by FBI regulations. You're not allowed just to take them and leak them to the media. They were addressed to high-ranking FBI officials. They were part of an investigation done on an FBI computer by the head of that investigation. So I don't think there's any question now, there shouldn't have been before, but there's no question now that this was FBI material improperly removed and then leaked by Comey. And what's so concerning here is it's sort of a concerted effort by many to ignore the unprofessional conduct of Comey in this regard. You can disagree with the president, you could disagree with the firing of Comey, but what Comey did in this instance is very troubling, and it's wrong.
The president tweeted, he said, James Comey's memos are classified. I did not declassify them. They belong to our government. Therefore, he broke the law. Additionally, he totally made up many of the things that he said I said, and he is already a proven liar and leaker. Where are memos on Clinton, Lynch, and others? He brings up several good points. What do you like about that tweet, and what do you not like?
Well, I don't know what was made up and what was not. The problem is that doesn't matter once you take a step like this. He is a leaker. And he did improperly remove FBI material and gave it to the media. What's particularly troubling is that there was no need to do that. What these memos confirm is that investigators and FBI officials had the memos. So he wasn't trying to preserve the memos. He wasn't trying to guarantee that people would see them.
What was he doing?
Well, the only answer to that is that it wasn't in the interest of the investigation. It was in the interest of James Comey. He took over the public narrative by releasing these memos. It's the same dynamic when rushing a tell-all book to print. He published a book that referenced both disclosed and undisclosed evidence in the middle of an investigation that he headed where he's a key witness.
Yeah.
Why? That clearly is not helping the investigation.
And in the memos, if you read them, it's only 15 pages, easy to read. He says clearly that he is not a leaker. And then in the interview and in his book, he talks about why he leaked the information to his friend, the professor. So he's telling a lie there, so why should we believe anything else he says?
Well, what's also very odd about this is that he admits that he did not consult with Mueller about publishing his book. He clearly didn't consult with people about taking FBI material and leaking it to the media. And again, you're asked, why? Is this what he's referring to as ethical leadership? Lawyers
yeah, he
don't
wants to
do
school
this.
all of us on ethics, right?
Right. Lawyers don't do this, and FBI directors don't do this if the investigation is the paramount concern.
Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Good to see you. All right, still ahead, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders is going to join us live, plus Professor Jordan Peterson,
My pleasure.
schools liberals on why they lost in 2016. He's going to join us live next.
Your country is polarizing in a way that's not good, and that, you know, people are going after Trump. There's all these people that elected him and that are identified with him, and they're not taking this well.
Canadian professor and psychologist Dr. Jordan Peterson making headlines after taking on Bill Maher and other liberal panelists over the weekend and educating them on the left's lack of respect for Trump supporters. Take a look.
Your country is polarizing in a way that's not good, and that, you know, people are going after Trump. And I understand that. It's not like I don't understand that. But there's all these people that elected him and that are identified with him, and they're not taking this well. You need to have respect for the rest of your citizens, and if your country isn't going to pull itself apart. And I really see this happening.
Dr. Peterson joins us right now. He, of course, is a psychology professor at the University of Toronto and author of a New York Times bestseller, 12 Rules for Life, and just released the new audiobook version of Maps of Meaning. He joins us live right now from Canada. Good morning to you, Doctor.
Morning.
So there you were watching the liberals on the panel talking, and then you started to educate them or give them your point of view on why they lost. Were they receptive to that?
Well, I don't know if the question that I asked was really addressed, which is that if Trump is taken out by one means or another, then how are you going to heal the rift between the left and the right in the United States? And this is a serious problem. I mean, everyone, regardless of their political orientation, needs to live together. And if we want peace, and if we have any sense, we're going to want peace. But the question wasn't addressed.
But the interesting thing is, and something that you brought up, was just the fact that the other panelists were not on your side politically, but given the way that elections work, they have to accept, well, they don't in many cases, the election results, and you've got to respect the person who did vote for Donald Trump because they were simply exercising their right.
Well, I think you've seen in the United States, probably ever since a special prosecutor was nominated to go after Clinton, I think you've seen attempts to bring down the presidents legally every time there's been an election, and that seems to have been ramped up. And that's very dangerous. I mean, it's obviously the president isn't above the law.
Sure.
But increasingly, the political parties seem to be using extra like means outside of the electoral process to impose their will on the electoral outcome, and this is a bad thing.
Well, just look at what the Democrats in the Senate are trying to do right now to Mike Pompeo. Never in history has anybody tried to shut down a president's selection for Secretary of State, and this appears to be based on politics.
Yeah, well, I mean, people need to understand that those on the other side of the political spectrum have their reasons for looking at the world the way they do. I mean, each side can become too extreme, but if you want a civil society, then people have to be civil to one another, and I see that breaking down. And it's not a pathway we want to trot if we have any sense.
Well, you're right. There isn't a lot of civility these days, and there's not a lot on campus. I know you're a professor, and you go out and you're an alternative voice on college campuses. We're going to play you a soundbite from Candace Owens, who is the communications director for Turning Point USA. She was at UCLA in the last couple of days, and she was confronting some Black Lives Matter protesters, and she had a point for them. Listen to this, and then we want to get your point of view.
Sure.
Victim mentality is not cool. I don't know why people like being oppressed. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. I love oppression. We're oppressed. 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, which, by the way, none of you guys lived through. Your grandparents did. And it's embarrassing that you utilize their history. You're not living through anything right now. You're overly privileged Americans.
You're overly privileged Americans, she said that. And then a few hours or a day or two later, Kanye West, the singer, the artist, tweeted this out. I love the way Candace Owens thinks. And then now he's taking a lot of heat because he's supporting somebody who's from the political right. What did you make of what she had to say?
Well, I think that Candace is commenting about the danger of adopting a victimization oppressor narrative, and it's a narrative that the hard left has really been pushing, and ever since Marx, of course, that the world is composed of those who are victimized and those who are the oppressors, and everyone successful is an oppressor, and everyone else is a moral victim, like a morally acting victim. And it's a very, very dangerous narrative, and it's certainly one that's unbelievably widespread on university campuses. To look at the world that way, to look at the world through a group identity lens, is puts us back in a tribal situation and will produce conflict. It has throughout the 20th century. And so Candace is objecting to that, and rightly so. It's an unbelievably pernicious ideology, and the universities are to blame for distributing it in large part. It's really appalling and dangerous.
Well, when you look at just politics in general, during the last election cycle back in 2016, the Democrats did adopt a very strong identity politics program. And, you know, all the postmortems have said that really didn't work. So it will be interesting to see what the Democrats do going forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, the right-wingers, the conservative types like Candace have to tell a better story than the Democrats, and the story's got to be, and this goes for centrist liberals too, the story has to be that, you know, there's obviously racial differences and ethnic differences and gender differences and all of that, and some of that manifests itself in terms of prejudice, but the fundamental issue is that we've always regarded the individual as the measure in the West, and that's the best idea the world's ever had. And if we lose that, then it's going to be catastrophic. So everyone should be pushing against that, whether they're on the right or the left, if they have any sense. And the moderate left needs to dissociate themselves from the radical left, and this is something they refuse to do. It's conceptually difficult to do it, but it's a moral imperative. It's a moral necessity.
Let's see what happens. All right, Jordan, thank you very much. By the way, folks, Dr. Peterson has developed a new online writing program. It's called Self-Authoring. If you're interested, go to selfauthoring.com for more information. And Dr. Peterson, thank you very much for joining us today from Canada. All right, 7:30 now here in New York City. We just talked about Democrats obstructing Mike Pompeo's confirmation. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, live from the White House to respond, coming up next. Plus, a bus carrying high schoolers bursts into flames on a highway, and guess who was there to rescue? Dr. Oz, of course, we're going to tell you that. And Anna Koyman, look at that, traveled 28 hours by herself for baby Brooks's first trip to the United States. How did she do it? She's here with some travel tips for parents coming up.
Living the dream and never giving up in what we believe in.
Can you hear me okay? All right, everybody.
Take one, take two. It is your shot of the morning. Today, the U.S. Army Reserves turns 110 years old. We are honoring them with a birthday cake for 110 years old. Looking good. Brigadier General Robert Cooley, the commander of the 35th Civil Affairs Command, has the honor of cutting the cake. But first of all, sir, tell us about your 110th birthday.
Well, this is an amazing day for us, Janice. We are 110 years old, and we've got some of our best soldiers in the United States here to join us today. So these are the Army Reserve soldiers. We started out in 1908 as 160 medical reserve professionals, and we've grown to over 200,000 soldiers and over 11,000 civilians in every 50 state supporting our active component and our U.S. government around the world.
Well, happy birthday, and we are going to cut this cake with a ceremonial sword, are we not?
We are.
You do the honors, my friend.
And it is history that we take the youngest soldier and the oldest soldier, and we do this for you. So I would step back a little bit because it could start to fly.
Don't get sprayed by icing.
Happy birthday, Army Reserve. 1, 2, 3.
Yes! Yay! Happy birthday, Army Reserve. Thank you so much. I can't wait to cut the cake. Say hi to everybody at home. Give them a wave.
Hi, everybody.
You guys look amazing for 110. Back inside. I'll bring some birthday cake, Steve Ainsley and Brian.
All right, JD, thank you very much. That's the way you want to do it at home.
Looks good,
Just a
right?
great big poof.
I do not remember that type of impact in years past. This was a delivery.
That sword for Hayden's third birthday.
I'm not sure the other
Bring that
parents
out.
want you to bring
that
out.
out at the birthday party.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to get attendance next year if you do it for the third. That's
My dad was in the Army Reserves for 20 years, served every 1 week in a month and 2 weeks every summer. I remember him.
And I know he's
Wow.
watching. Thank you for your service, sir.
Yeah, God bless you, Dad.
All right. Meanwhile, she is working for the President of the United States in public service. She is the White House press secretary. She is Sarah Sanders, standing by live. Good
She
morning
is
to
very
you.
important. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you guys.
Well, you got a big guest today coming in, France's President Macron. Why is this allegiance so important to us?
Look, this is our country's oldest ally, and they've been a great partner. The president and President Macron have had a great relationship since the very beginning. We have a lot of things that we can work with. They're one of the biggest trading partners we have in Europe, and we're really excited about this visit. The First Lady has been incredible throughout this process. She's done this all on her own without bringing in an outside consultant, been very hands-on, and this is going to be a spectacular couple of days.
Well, Sarah, a couple of things. So one thing's pretty clear is that France and Germany desperately wants to stay in the Iranian deal. Has the president gone over the framework that would get him interested in staying in it?
Look, we certainly expect this to be a topic that comes up both at this visit over the next couple of days as well as the visit with Chancellor Merkel at the end of this week. But the president's been very clear about how he feels about this deal and some changes that he needs and wants to see reflected will certainly come up. I'm not going to get ahead of anything that the president may or may not commit to and what he'd want to see in that. But the president's been very clear about the dislike he has for this deal and how he wants to make sure that we get something better.
Well, when you look at what's happening in Syria, and we had help from the UK and from France, and you look what's happening in North Korea ahead of that summit that our president's going to meet with Kim Jong-un, it's very important that we have a Secretary of State. And Pompeo is the president's choice, and it looks like he's not going to be confirmed. What are your thoughts? What's your reaction? What's the president's reaction?
At least at a committee.
We certainly hope that some members will change their minds. Look, at some point, Democrats have to decide whether they love this country more than they hate this president. And they have to decide that they want to put the safety and the security and the diplomacy of our country ahead of their own political games. And we're very hopeful that they will. Mike Pompeo is a highly qualified individual, top of his class at Harvard, first in his class at West Point. He's been an impeccable CIA director. He's done a great job. He was confirmed there. And if you just look at history, the past Secretary of States have been confirmed unanimously.
Right.
And Republicans have come on board and supported Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, people we know who they didn't necessarily agree with on the political spectrum, but they knew how important this position was, and they didn't play games with it. And Democrats need to do the same thing with Mike Pompeo and confirm him. He's been one of the leading people when it comes to the negotiations and the conversations with North Korea.
Absolutely.
And to stop that would be incredibly dangerous and damaging for our country and for the world.
So are you predicting that he will pass out of committee or by the Senate as a general body?
Look, we'd love to see both. We know how good of a candidate and how highly qualified he is and what a great Secretary of State he's going to make. And we expect Democrats to get on board and focus on what's best for our country, not what's best for their midterm elections.
Sarah, it's not just Democrats. Rand Paul is causing this uproar. Senator Jeff Flake hasn't made up his mind. Rand Paul thinks he knows the president's foreign policy better than the president, and that this guy, Mike Pompeo, does not represent the president the way Rand Paul wants the president to be represented. What's your message to Rand Paul?
Look, Director Pompeo has spent hours upon hours with the president, briefing him on the most sensitive topics and information that our country has. They have a great chemistry. They are on the same page. Otherwise, the president wouldn't have put him in there. After spending so much time with him, he has a great in-depth knowledge of where they are, how they agree, and he wants to see Director Pompeo. And Rand Paul should have faith in the president's decision as a supporter of his, that he's making the right decision for our country. And he should certainly be supportive of what the president is trying to do and continue to be a good ally and partner with the administration.
All right. Let's talk a little bit. You were talking about Mike Pompeo and North Korea. Stories out today in the Wall Street Journal talking about how the president is not going to make the same mistake other administrations have made in the past. North Korea is not going to get anything until they, for the most part, really start down the path of pulling the plug on their nukes, right?
Look, that's certainly the focus of this conversation, has to be denuclearization. That's the ultimate goal. We've been very clear about that from the beginning. This president, as well as every member of the administration, has made clear that that is the goal of any conversation, is denuclearization. And until then, we're going to continue the maximum pressure campaign on North Korea.
Well, you thought it was very interesting. Today's New York Times says that China's been dealt out of this. So far, is there a sense that China's not playing a role? And if so, is that good or bad news?
China's played a big role in this process. They've been a good partner with the United States in helping put pressure on North Korea. That's helped get us to the point we are, where they're willing to sit down, where they've started to make concessions, where they've even started to do so publicly through their own state-owned media. We've seen that over the last week. These are big steps in the right direction. Don't get us wrong, we're not naive. We know we have a long way to go, but this is real progress, and China has certainly helped play a role in that, and that's largely all in part because of the relationship that the president has built with President Xi. They disagree on a lot of things, trade in particular, but they have a good relationship, and the president has asked them to step up and to do more than we've ever seen them do in the past, and they've done that. They certainly could do a lot more than they have done, but we're appreciative of what they've done so far, and we hope that they'll continue to help us put pressure on North Korea and continue to help us be a partner in getting to that ultimate goal of denuclearizing the peninsula.
Has a date been set yet for that summit for our president to meet with North Korea's leader?
We don't have any specifics that we can announce right now, but we're certainly moving forward in those negotiations. And again, we feel like we've made great progress, particularly on the concessions that the North Koreans have started to make, that we've seen over the last week, and seen them do publicly now to their own through state media, which is a big deal in North Korea. Again, we're not naive to think that we don't have a long way to go in this process, but we're certainly moving forward and like the direction that we're headed.
Is that a mower in the background?
There is.
Okay.
There is. Look, we've got a state visit coming. We've got to get all hands on deck all the time. It's going to look perfect, and we've got to make sure that the lawn's ready to go.
All right. Sarah, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. A Fox News alert. An urgent manhunt is growing by the hour for that man who killed 4 people inside a Waffle House in Tennessee. We are live in Nashville next. We are back with a Fox News alert. A frantic manhunt intensifying after a gunman shot and killed 4 people at a Waffle House in Tennessee.
The entire state on edge this morning as police issue an alert for the 29-year-old shooter.
All right, Elizabeth Armstrong from our Fox affiliate in Nashville joined us live. Elizabeth, the guy's got guns still, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we actually just got word from the command post out here. There was no sighting, no credible sighting of 29-year-old Travis Reinking overnight. So as you can imagine, people understandably waking up concerned, some even scared. We've got local schools on lockout this morning, police lining the streets up and down this area. We've also got several teams, the FBI, ATF, local police, still continuing to search for this troubled 29-year-old. Now, even before this carnage at the Waffle House behind me, this man was known to law enforcement across the country. We've learned that the Secret Service actually took him into custody after he entered a restricted area trying to see President Trump. A sheriff's department in Illinois also revoked his firearms authorization. His guns were seized and ultimately released to his father. One of those guns used in this shooting behind me here. Nashville also has a new hero this morning, a man named James Shaw. He wrestled Reinking to the ground and was able to take those guns away and started a GoFundMe page for the victims this morning. Live in Nashville, Elizabeth Armstrong.
All right, Elizabeth, for the latest. Wow, thanks so much. It's incredible.
It is. Anna Koyman, look at that. She traveled 28 hours by herself for baby Brooks' first trip to America. How did she do it? She's our hero. She is here with some travel tips for parents next. Baby Brooks made his Fox & Friends debut earlier this month, but it took a lot to get him here. He and Anna had to travel all the way from Australia.
That's right. Our former Fox & Friends weekend co-host has some ways to make traveling with a little bundle of joy a lot easier.
He looks bigger even just a week later. Good morning. Thanks for having me back, guys. You know, the hardest part was that I had to go it alone because my husband can't get off work until the end of our trip. So I really had to get creative when I needed an extra set of hands. You'll see what I mean. Check it out.
I'm leaving the land of koalas and kangaroos for the USA. Door to door, I'll clock more than 28 hours of travel time from Sydney to Charlotte.
Traveling on my own with my newborn son is no easy task, and as you can imagine, will require several suitcases. Fortunately, my stroller and car seat don't count against the airline luggage allowance, but man, I got a lot to do. You better get packing. Both mom and baby need tickets, and for international travel, proper identification.
That's not all you gotta pack.
I've jammed my breastfeeding pillow in here, I've got my play mat, and you know I can't forget the red, white, and blue.
My husband will have to join us later on the trip, so as he drops us off at security, Brooks and I will take on this adventure as a pair.
So I'd say we're off to a great start.
Some say to take advantage of early family boarding, but Brooks shows how the extra time might be better spent off the plane.
Koalas, proof that my baby decided to have a blowout before we even left the Sydney airport. But, Brooks, I'm not mad, buddy. I'm impressed.
I packed tons of extra onesies, including cheap ones I don't mind throwing away.
You don't want those things to marinate in your bag for hours, do you?
Some people see a baby on a plane and say, oh no. Well, try to make them say, aww, instead. I let Brooks flirt away. That way, if he cries, his new friends may not mind so much.
So we are about to take off, and my plan is to breastfeed this little guy. It actually helps to equalize their ears from all the pressure.
A bottle or pacifier works for this too. Many airlines have bassinets for longer flights. Be sure to check in early and request one because they can be a lifesaver.
We're about to land in the U.S. and Brooks did pretty well. Extra clothing is clutch due to wardrobe malfunctions caused by bodily functions. Brooks is on onesie number 3, I'm on top number 2. So I seriously feel like a pack horse walking through LAX right now. There's no way I could do this without literally wearing Brooks. Baby carriers are an awesome option because it lets you have both of your hands free.
This really comes in handy while going through security.
We got a crying baby and we're getting our milk checked at TSA right now.
You know that 3-3-3 rule? It doesn't apply for infants and their milk.
You can take it through. We're going to have to run a test on it though.
For a smoother security check, try to pack any milk you bring in one cooler bag. One plane ride left until we get home to North Carolina. But what seat to pick? Some moms swear by the window seat because it offers privacy and a quiet space for your baby. But others love the aisle seat to make it easy to get up if your baby gets fuzzy. I'm riding in the aisle for this flight. You ready to go see Grandma and Grandpa? We're here! And now comes the part that makes the travel all worth it. Hi, Mommy! Oh, it's so good to see you guys.
So good to see you, too.
So 28 hours, I made it to my hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina, and it
Good
felt
job
great.
shooting the story yourself and the occasional flight attendant.
That didn't add to the travel stress at all, Steve.
You had the whole, it did it all on an iPhone?
Yeah, the whole thing was on an iPhone. I have a very creative field producer, Samantha Honig.
And on the mom phone.
And on the Anacam on the mom phone. Oh, yes, on my mom's phone.
Yeah. They have the bassinets on the plane.
Yeah, so the deal with those is you have to request them when you're booking your tickets, and they don't make a guarantee on most of the airlines, at least they didn't on the one that I flew, until you get to the ticket counter. Okay. And they only have a couple on each flight, so but they can be a lifesaver. So it's really good if you can get them. The other big tip I have is just ask for help for people around you. As soon as I got on the plane, one lady said, "My name's Dina. I'm a grandma. I can help you."
Oh, that's awesome.
There's another sweet girl from Chicago who helped me too.
That's great. Well, it's great to see your beautiful baby boy.
Thank you. We are. I'm so honored to have him on the curvy couch and here in New York City.
On tomorrow with mom cooking hacks.
Yeah, more mommy hacks coming up.
Coming up next, Mitt Romney's opponent in Utah.
And I'm holding the baby.
Yeah.